This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Good evening, EduFolk, and welcome to the Wednesday Late Show, this evening hosted by the delightful Tom Hopkins Burke, who is ready and raring to go already. I can see him there. Good evening, Tom. How are you doing this evening?
Certainly ready. Raring might be a little bit of an overstatement. It's been a long half a week so far. And for me, I'm now more than halfway through for half term, so I'm absolutely delighted. Very good evening, everybody, and welcome to Teachers Talk Radio tonight. My name is Tom Hopkins Burke. It is the 27th of September, and today we are talking all about teacher workload. I'd love to remind you about some shows past and future as well. Two of them hosted by Tom Rogers on Monday, last Monday, 2 days ago. He welcomed Lindsay Patience and Lucy Rose to talk all about their new book, Flex Education, talking about all things flexible working in education. And that was published with Sage. And you can get the 25% off for any Sage book with the code TTR25. And next Monday, on Monday the 2nd of October, Tom is back and he's going to be asking the question, are teachers more tired than ever before? And I think that links really, really nicely to our show tonight, because I'm going to be exploring essentially what can be done to reduce teacher workload. And the short answer, if you don't want to sit through 90 minutes, is not a great deal if you don't have a lot of money. So we're going to delve into some of those things. We've got a couple of guests we're going to hear from, coming from very different perspectives in terms of a teacher workload debate. I'm going to run through the history of teacher workload as well, in terms of initiatives that have been and gone. And I'm also going to share some approaches that have been taken which may or may not have been effective. So to start off with, before we introduce our guests for tonight, it's worth me telling you that teaching, yes, it is a rewarding profession, but it does come with its fair share of challenges. And that's where ADAPT come in. Now, they're not your typical trade union, but instead of our modern-day political alternative, they offer expert legal, employment and mental health support. This is protection without the politics. So what makes ADAPT different? Well, they're always apolitical and independent. They specialise solely in supporting individual teachers, and every caseworker is professionally qualified, ensuring you get the best advice. Plus, there's 24/7 mental health support. So whether it's a simple contract check or handling serious allegations, ADAPT are there for you. Why not join the thousands of educators who have chosen ADAPT to protect their careers? Subscribe at adapt.org.uk today. ADAPT, supporting school staff, protecting careers. And here's something special for Teachers Talk Radio listeners during September. Use the codes TTR Annual or TTR Monthly, and you will receive a 10% discount on a subscription. And with ADAPT, you could save over £80 compared to an equivalent union membership. Tonight's show is also brought to you in association with Vibble, the home of verbal feedback. Vibble is a feedback management platform designed to reduce teacher workload. Using Vibble, you can simply snap student work, record verbal feedback, and send your feedback to a student or even a whole class in seconds. Once your students receive your feedback, they're notified by email and they can access and respond to your feedback on any device. You can track and monitor how students interact with your feedback and set up feedback coaches to instill a culture of best practice in your school. The possibilities are endless, and this is why Vibble has been trusted by schools across 18 countries to reduce teacher workload and give better, faster and more collaborative feedback. So if you're interested and you want to set up a free trial or a pilot, why not visit www.vibble, that's vibbl.co.uk today. So it's time to introduce our first guest. We have Gwen on the line. Gwen, I hope you're there. Good evening. How are you doing?
Hello. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Good.
So for people who don't know you, Gwen, and I know I've only got you for about 5 or 10 minutes tonight, just tell us who you are and sort of where you are, because I know you've left teaching and you're now in tutoring.
Yes. Yeah, so teaching in state education for 20 years, all told. Most of that was in secondary school. I had about 4.5 nearly 5 years in further education. I decided, I think, that I just kind of couldn't and perhaps didn't want to teach in state education anymore. I just didn't have another year in me, so it was time to kind of bow out, really.
So you're now tutoring.
Yes.
So what? I mean, look, I'm a history teacher, so I go through bits from looking at all sorts of different causes, your long terms, your short terms, your catalysts, and your triggers. Was there a straw that broke the camel's back in terms of perhaps your old workload played, or was it sort of a culmination of a series of longer term causes?
I think it was. I suppose you look back over 20 years, and you kind of weigh things up, and you kind of project a little bit to the future and go, things are difficult now, and I think they've been difficult in schools from the pandemic onwards for all sorts of reasons. One of them being terrible education secretaries making things an awful lot harder than they needed to be. And I thought, well, is it going to get any easier in the next couple of years? And I thought, well, obviously not. It's just going to get increasingly more difficult. Do I have the energy? Do I have the mental capacity to be able to cope with that adequately? I don't think I did. Did I have the energy? No, I didn't. Did I have the desire to, I suppose, take the hits that is teaching? So you've got to. There are negatives that go along with the positives, and you can cope with the negatives if in your head and while you're teaching you think, okay, this is great, this is good fun, and you kind of learn to swallow the things that irritate you, I think, and you perhaps you suppress them a bit, and then there comes a point where you don't anymore.
Yeah.
When you go, oh no, no, it's ridiculous.
I mean, talking to some of my former colleagues who've left teaching last 2 years, a lot of them have said the best thing about the job was actually being in the classroom with the kids.
Yes.
Does that chime with you?
Yes, yeah. It was always the best bit was with the kids in the classroom, and there's magic moments that will never be replicated in any other environment. The light bulb moments, the unexpected daft question that makes you fold up double in laughter, the annual that year 7 hands up like daffodils in a breeze that drives you a little bit insane. There's stuff that you just can't replicate any other job, and you wouldn't want it anywhere else either. But I think for me personally, it was just a growing intolerance of perhaps that it's a job that requires sacrifice, and you make those sacrifices, you think, for the good of the school, for the good of society as a whole, for the children sat in front of you. And then there's, I think a lot of that is taken for granted.
And a lot of people sort of say, well, if you're struggling in education as a teacher, a lot of people do, then try another school. Was that something you did? Was it something you contemplated, or was it something you just outright rejected?
It was. I was in. It wasn't the school's. I was in a nice school. Yeah. It wasn't anything. It was nothing the school could have done. It wasn't the school's fault. There's no blame I assign to the school at all. It was a really nice school, and I was lucky to be there. But I think that some of it was down to previous experience. It was down to previous experiences in other schools. Bullying, incompetence, and being overwhelmed, and that kind of stuff. And that the scars remained, and the wounds were there, and it's just being in a school was enough to keep triggering depression, anxiety, and stress. And I thought, I don't want to continue to be medicated in order to go and do my job.
And so, in terms of looking at that sort of depression, anxiety, and stress, is there one? We've got the DFE's launched a new workload task force. It published a survey in 2019. It published a survey in 2016. So it's not the first time it's done something like this. If you could ask the workload reduction task force to focus on, it might be one thing, it might be 2 or 3 things, what would you ask them to prioritise and focus on?
Well, I think they need to do better than that 5 hours a week. I think that's laughable. What difference is 5 hours a week going to make to somebody marking year 11 mocks when they're not going to have time to eat? Or what's 5 hours in a full-time teacher's workload? It's nothing. So I think they need to be a bit more ambitious about the ways in which they want to do, and how do you, or who's measuring what when, and you need to look at what is being done. Like teachers do actually log what they do from the moment they, perhaps not even before they get to school, when they actually start doing things for school. It might be at home, and I think that would be useful. I can't remember. There's a special phrase for it, isn't it? Where they just log what you're doing and you write down how long it takes.
Oh,
and time and motion, things like that.
I'm not sure. Sam might know. Somebody else might know.
Study, so let's see what actually is done and how much school invades other parts of your life. That's the thing I think that is not just me, but it can overwhelm, and being constantly overwhelmed with other people's expectations of what you should be doing, your own expectations of what you'd like to be doing but probably can't, because there's too much work to do. Constant feelings of, I need to be doing better. Those things I think are very damaging to teachers and teaching in general. And I think that the idea about that 5 hours is, I think the one of the biggest problems is that teachers' time, which is absolutely everything, is just really not respected. And I think that got me more and more infuriated towards, and I think it's probably because I was leaving, but that infuriated me more and more, is the extent to which a teacher's time just isn't respected. Like say, can you just do this thing? It'll take 5 minutes. Well, that I was doing this thing that's really important for the kids that I'm going to teach in a minute or tomorrow. You're important, not necessarily important to me and my class and my marking load. And that's what I mean by teachers' time not being respected, particularly.
No, I see exactly what you mean. Some people have said 20% PPA, so experienced
that would be better.
Have a ACT's timetable. Would that be sufficient, or just or necessary, or first step?
It might not be sufficient, but it would be better than the 10% that we've got at the moment. That again, that had to be fought for, didn't it? That wasn't always the case.
No, indeed.
Unions had to fight for that, and all the admin jobs and things that teachers shouldn't be doing, but probably are doing, because there's, schools can't retain support staff because their wages are shocking, and can't compete with less stressful jobs. Where people can work from home. The inflexibility, I think, is an issue in schools in general, everywhere.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about a tweet from yesterday that you put out, and you said, "This could easily be in poor taste of my fellow teachers at the minute, but it will also make a point I recruit into retention of teachers. So I'm now in my 3rd month kind of being on the outside of teaching, and I've noticed I'm not tired all the time." It was 80,000 views this morning.
That's nice.
So a lot of teachers looking at that and going, "How on earth?" So you're now tutoring, and if somebody's listening to this and is a teacher and is thinking, "I can't do another year of this," and if it's for summer, I just need to get out. What would your advice to them be in terms of sort of finding a way out?
Oh, it's not easy, because I think when you're exhausted and mentally done in, but finding the time and means to research another career, perhaps rejig your CV, and it can be that's another thing that can overwhelm. It's like, what do people outside of education want and look for in a CV, in a job application? You got used to applying for teacher jobs and writing the epic statement and the time, talk about teachers' time being not respected. The whole job application process is terrible. But you that's what I know. So I think you need to look at what can I do already as a teacher that would be valued and appreciated elsewhere. And there's all that stuff to do with, because time is so precious, your time management, your project managing, your problem solving constantly. You obviously know how to work to deadlines, because that's a constant in schools. There's a million things that are skills and knowledge even that teachers have that are transferable elsewhere. There's loads of Facebook groups that will help teachers with job applications in other fields. And there's an awful lot of teachers moving to the civil service, which has got its very own kind of special recruitment process. So which is something to learn. But sometimes it's you take a leap of faith and go, right, I just need to resign. And that also gives you then the impetus, because money's going to stop at some point. That gives you a special kind of impetus to go, right, I need to sort myself out. So I'm giving myself a whirl as somebody that's self-employed. So that's also a lot more stuff to learn, especially to do about tax. But yeah, I don't think it's not an easy process either. Leaving teaching, something you've invested an awful lot of your time in, certainly if you've been in it like a long time, a decade or so or more, it's very hard to let go of.
Yeah.
And
carry on.
And I was thinking about mentally, the process is very difficult, and you can feel very defeated or feel like you've failed at this job because you needed to go, you needed to leave, or it was be crushed or crumbled. It was very, very difficult, and it would be nice, but it'll be impossible if there was a process of having, certainly if you're leaving the profession, of having like a soft exit, in the way that in theory the ECT's reduced timetable is supposed to be like a soft landing. It isn't. It's really bloody difficult, but that a way that you can I can tie things up. I need a bit left on the timetable so I can tie things up for people who will be inheriting my classes. Do you know what I mean by a way of making the exit actually not unpleasant?
Yeah, definitely. You want to leave on good terms. I think the point that you made is really interesting about the ECT timetable being sort of soft landing, and it definitely isn't. It's worth always looking. I mean, I work in a school which is attached to a skit. And I'm very close with our skit director, and they were saying to me last week about the changes which are being brought in for 24-25 trainees. In that I think they've got to average across a training year 15 hours a week of teaching. That's the average. So for half of that year, they're going to be doing more than that. Now, most trainees I've worked with and I've trained are probably picking up 15, slightly more than 15 towards the very end. So to average that across the whole year, you talk about soft landings, they're being thrown in right at the deep end.
Yeah. That's like limestone stuff, isn't it? It's I'm just pouring tea, sorry. It should be softer than it is, and I think there's elements of the administration of the ECC process. Again, it's just from what I observe on Twitter and some conversations. It's very Kafkaesque and labour intensive. And I think these systems are developed and put in place for the ease of the people at the end of creating the system, but not for the people who have got to do it and administer it in school. So there's never very much like they call it in software, don't they? End user consultation. Like you swap from one, say, software system for recording attendance like Sims to Bromcom or something. And that's done for the convenience of perhaps people who are collecting the data from those systems, but not necessarily for ease of use of the teachers in the classroom. So that's another element about teachers' time not being respected, and I think that grinds you down.
The other thing, of course, that you made, your point you made about the application forms for teaching being completely arduous. I think it's absolutely ridiculous as well. The new culprit I've found from helping tradies, in particular applying for jobs, is the online application form, where you can't save a copy for future if you need it. So you have to make sure that you've got copies of personal statements and any jobs histories, etc. Because as soon as you send it online, it disappears forever. So I'm fully behind a national campaign for a single application form for all schools.
Yes. That's really well formatted, because they're not always really well formatted.
No, a lot of it's on sort of Microsoft Word 97 and full of all of these clunky text boxes and whatnot.
And then we have like the Hunger Games element of the teaching interview process.
That's a whole nother show, I think. Whole nother show. Now, Gwen, I know I didn't have you for that long, so I'm going to let you go there. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and do feel free to hang around if you like.
I will, yes. Thank you very much.
I'm now going to bring in Sam, because Sam's been waiting very, very patiently. And I know I don't have long with Sam either. So Sam Strickland is on the line. He is principal and CEO. I think that's a new addition to your bio, in which case, congratulations, Sam. How are you doing tonight?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on here.
Now, I remember, Sam, I think I've lost all sense of time in the long term, but I think I heard you speak a couple of years ago at a local research aid in Nottingham, I think, about just sensible approaches to workload and time management and things like that, and just really stripping it back and just making it really, really simple. Now, you come at this from an interesting position. We've just heard from Gwen, who has just left the profession as a teacher and gone into tutoring. You sit in the chair, so to speak, as the head teacher. So what sort of perspective do you have on teacher workload from the principal's chair?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously look at it from not just my school's perspective, but I go up and down the lanes because my school's part of the National Behaviour Hub scheme, and obviously see what's on Twitter. And workload is a huge topic, isn't it, amongst all teachers. And I'm really privileged to be able to deliver this bite size ultimately in terms of what the entirety of teacher training, but talks to teacher training providers, and they're half full. There isn't a maths teacher, a computing teacher, a physics teacher. Primary is down for the first time possibly ever in terms of recruitment figures. And that, I think, in many regards, is a manifestation of perceptions about teacher workload and what the job actually entails. And certainly, I think the pandemic has kind of accelerated this issue, I think, hugely. And I think to what we've had to experience over the last 2-3 years, certainly the last couple of autumns and winters, this isn't meant as a criticism of teachers at all, but the number of staff that are absent through illness of getting COVID has, I think, exemplified workload, because then you've got people covering one another and covering one another almost willingly because they don't want children to suffer, especially with examination year groups. But of course, that puts another pressure on staffing bodies. There simply isn't enough staff to go around at certain points with staffing absences to cover every class in many regards. No one cover supervisors and supply teachers. That is one element, of course, of workloads. But I think there's a greater awareness as well. I do think that, again, the pandemic has a seismic sort of psychological shift in people, and workload was something that was bubbling in a big way in 2019, 2018, and certainly before then. But I think people have had a chance to, dare I say it, probably stop and pause and think about what they're doing a lot more. Remote working has come in. I know Gwen talked about that as being a thing. And I think to many of my friends who are not teachers and have, in inverted commas, real jobs, for want of a better phrase, and they're able to work remotely for 2, 3, 4 days a week. They might only have to go to the office once a month, depending on which one of my friends I talk to. So I do think teachers have an eye on that, actually, in terms of, well, what else is there out there? But equally do look at what they're doing day in, day out. And however we strip it, 22 out of 25 periods a week, working full time, is tough. It's tough, irrespective of everything else that teachers have to do. Just the simple being in a classroom in front of children, teaching them, it is taxing. It's hard work, and it's hard. And I want to, especially over a sustained window.
I want to pick your brains on this as a principal in your case, because lots of people have said, well, Tom Rogers has been on me and said, why not have a PPA a day at secondary, or 20% PPA? It's a really noble aim, but just from a principal's perspective, in terms of how much additional financial pressure would that put on the system in terms of financing 20% PPA?
Well, I think this is the root problem, really, with regards to workload in the main, isn't it? That there simply just aren't enough teachers. However we want to strip it, there simply aren't enough. And it's going to require, I wouldn't be able to quantify how much money, but it's going to require a lot more money, a far greater investment of money into the system to allow for 20% PPA. And I think that would be the first of many stepping stones, actually. I think idealistically, maybe, we should probably be looking at teachers only having to teach 3 days a week in the classroom and the other 2 days to do everything else they've got to do. If we were to write down every task, every activity a teacher has to do, is insanely extensive. And I try not to lose sight of that sat in the chair. But I could give you kind of a figure because I think it'd be really difficult to calculate. But I would imagine we're looking at significantly more investment into the sector.
And do you think, from your position, that the government understands that? Because we've got the new task force, which is going to, well, I say the new task force, we've got a third investigation into teacher workload in 7 years. Do you think they understand that a lot of this actually comes down to something which actually amongst the public might not be that popular in terms of given the good old stereotypes about teachers, saying, well, actually they can have less time teaching. Do you think the government would at all be receptive to that?
We'd like to hope so. I guess the answer is I just don't know. I hope that the workload task force are able to present really hard evidence to, I imagine, the Education Select Committee first and foremost, before it probably then goes to the Department for Education and the Treasury about what's necessary for the profession to move forwards. I think what I will say here, and I don't want to sound like a politician though, is the profession is on the cusp, if not already in a crisis, and I think that needs to be recognised. I just hope it is.
Yeah, definitely. And we've got, I think it was 10,000 adverts out on a leading education recruitment website, I shall say, at the start of the week, which, I don't actually have the figures to hand from comparative September's, but I think that from my understanding is well above where it is. And so we've got this issue. And again, looking at from your perspective as a principal and as a CEO, you've got shortages in teacher training recruitment, and you've got tens of thousands of teachers leaving the profession before retirement, and you've very simply got vacancies that can't be filled. And one of the other things, having spoken to some teacher training providers, is the government is urging them, almost forcing them to take on people to train to be teachers who they don't think are really going to be up to it and might drop out or might not do that good a job. How much of a concern is that to you, or do you think these people can sort of be moulded into effective teachers?
It's a massive concern, because if they're the people that you're ultimately reliant on to teach the children in your school, the quality of delivery is going to become questionable. Ultimately the outcomes for these children, for those children, could be really put in jeopardy. If you've got a series of inexperienced, non-specialist people teaching maths, teaching computing, teaching physics, name but 3 areas where there are national shortages, of course, of these teachers, that's a huge issue. Foreign languages is another one in terms of trying to hit EBAC targets for schools. Well, where are all these teachers hiding? Because they aren't there. There isn't an abundance of them. And business studies is another area that's in the last 2 years become a real kind of crisis zone in terms of recruitment. So I think, in answer to your question, it's a huge concern, because your ideal universe, you want a fully qualified, fully fledged teacher in front of every child.
Yeah, thank you for that. And if I could also ask you about sort of, you're a historian first and foremost, in terms of sort of marking. How much of a problem has marking been in terms of workload?
I think if I go with my own experience, because it's always easy to talk about other people, but it's probably unfair. Marking was always hugely time consuming, hugely taxing. I think to my first school, which is an upper school, I predominantly taught GCSE and A-level classes and had oceans and oceans of marking to do. And I think there needs to be a rationalised approach to what we're marking, why are we marking it, how are we marking it, and what is the purpose behind it? What's the impact we want to see from it? I think routine marking, we have this in place at the school. Whole class feedback works really well and is a huge time saver. I appreciate that for A-level essays, as an example, you may have to mark those properly, so to speak. But I think you've got to come up with a sensible approach that leaders understand, and actually leaders also support staff to make those decisions around kind of the marking approach localised to their subject domain.
Yeah, definitely. Like this year, I've got 3 year 10 history classes, But what that means is next year I'm going to have 3 year 11 classes. Then you've also got the 2 year 13s, 1 year 12, etc., and the 1 year 11s this year. So there's quite a lot of marking going on. And I know, Sam, you just mentioned whole class feedback, and it's a great opportunity for me to remind everybody listening to Teachers Talk Radio tonight that this episode is sponsored by Vibble, the home of verbal feedback. Vibble is a feedback management platform designed to reduce teacher workload. Using Vibble, you can simply snap student work, record verbal feedback, and send your feedback to a student or even a whole class in seconds. Once your students receive your feedback, they're notified by email and they can access and respond to your feedback on any device. You can track and monitor how students interact with the feedback and set up feedback coaches to instill a culture of best practice in your school. The possibilities are endless, and this is why Vibble has been trusted by schools across 18 countries to reduce teacher workload and give better, faster, and more collaborative feedback. So to set up a free trial or a pilot, why not visit www.vibble.co.uk today. Gwen, I was wondering if you're still there.
Hello.
I'm not sure if you've been able to listen to what Sam's had to say from the principal's chair, and in terms of the issues around workload, in particular marking. Yourself being a former English teacher, has what Sam's said so far chimed with you?
What, because about the move to whole class feedback? Yeah. No, there was. I think you still need to be shown or learn how to be able to do that quickly and efficiently. Rather just say, "I'll just do whole class feedback."
Yes.
Okay, but how do you want me to do it, and what's the most efficient way to do it? And then that's useful, I think. Or because I know each teachers will adapt something to suit their own way of doing stuff. But even that, when we had a whole class feedback policy, it's very hard to undo the habit of close marking when that was how you were taught how to do it. And you're like under the thrall of, remember the era of dialogic marking, where you had to have a conversation with the pupil in green pen and purple pen, or if you were trained to mark in a particular way, or in a forensic kind of marking, so well, how do you unlearn it? And I didn't quite unlearn it. So I think some things need to be much more explicit and dealt with more explicitly and clearly. So this is what we mean by whole class feedback. This is the most efficient way to do it, and this is I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. And then that should save your workload. And I think that would help a lot of people. So I said I never kind of found my way with it. There might be a me thing where I think I need to do things thoroughly, or I've not done it well enough. That's probably a me thing rather than a school thing.
Yeah, no, I think they're all really valid points, and I think it goes with any sort of new policy or any new idea. You can't just go to teachers, look, we're going to do whole class feedback, here you go. You've got to model it, you've got to produce it, you've got to share good practice, you've got to, give you opportunities for deliberate practice. So, yeah, completely agree with all of that. And you also remind me with the dialogic marking, different coloured pens, of a wonderful video, I think it must have been about 6 years ago now, or maybe even longer, about a Star Wars parody of the dreaded Ofsted inspection. Where it talks about 15 different coloured pens, each for different parts of the marking process. I think we've lost Sam there. I know we're only going to have Sam for about 10 minutes, which is absolutely fine because he shared some really useful and important perspectives there from the perspective of the principal. I should point out, of course, that Gwen and Sam have spoken with us tonight. You can too, if you're listening live on Teachers Talk Radio. Then if you're listening on Spaces, then you can click on the button, the request button on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, and you will have the opportunity to come in and share your thoughts on how we can reduce teacher workload. I can see I'm going to do the wonderful thing which we used to do in Zoom teaching of welcoming everybody in the room. So we've got Andrew, subject leader of MFL. We've got South Africa in the UK, a dad educator and lifelong learner. Very good evening. We've got Oslem, we have got Michael, we have got Nathan, we have got Miss Hurst, we've got Mrs. B, we've got Abby, primary assistant head. Would love to hear from a primary perspective tonight. We've got Mr. Das, we've got teacher mum, Dan, another English teacher as well. And of course, we have got Peter as well, listening, I think, from Colombia, although I'm a history teacher, not a geography teacher, so I'm not 100% sure with my flags. There are other things we can talk about, and thank you very much for staying with us so far, Gwen. I wanted to talk about emails. And I did want to ask Sam about emails, because Sam works and leads a school where emails are emails are not sent in evenings and they're not sent at weekends. And they're all schedule sent, or, as a way of sort of promoting, that work-home balance. Lucy, you've got your hand up.
Yes, no, I didn't want to interrupt you, Tom, but just to say, Sam had to dash, unfortunately, but he did pass on his thanks to you, and hopefully we can get him to come back.
No worries. I knew I only had him for a limited amount of time. I was wondering if you were going to say something about emails, Lucy.
Well, actually, there is a law in Portugal where I'm based where you're not allowed to email outside of work hours.
That's very interesting. I don't know what you think on that, Gwen.
That's one thing I've been very strict about with myself when it came to work emails, which was after working at a school where it was the culture to answer emails at 10:30, 11 o'clock in the evening, and that was one of the first times I was signed off work with exhaustion and stress. I'd lost a lot of weight. And from that point on, I never looked at work emails at home. But then it's coping with them while you're at work, because I can see what people do. Because I look at them in the morning, and then before I went home, or possibly in a free period. But you could get, say, emails during a lesson. Say, can so and so come to the office? No, but I'm teaching. Why do you think I can read an email and act upon it while I'm teaching a class? Because my concern, and rightly, is the pupils that are sat in front of me. My concern is not your concern. I can't act upon an email while I have a lesson on. Yeah. So there's that kind of culture can be problematic in some schools, I think, or the people sending the emails are not mindful of the fact that the person they're sending it to is teaching. So there's nothing that can be done about what they want done.
Definitely. I mean, look, in our school, we have phones in every room. So if something really is urgent, then just call the phone number and send the kids where they need to go. And if it's not urgent, then, well, don't bother about it. Wait until another time. I'll be honest, I have sent emails at weekends, but I certainly would not expect anybody to reply in their weekend. And I'm somebody who does have emails on my phone, and if an email does come on up at 10:30 at night, I might read it, I might not read it. It depends who it's come from. It depends what the subject is. But I think that's one of the tricky things, and something that you sort of alluded to there, Gwen, about the fact that in teaching you just can't. No matter how hard you try, you really can't switch off from it. And especially at all of the heads of year I've spoken to, a couple of DSLs I've spoken to. I don't know many DSLs, but those of it who do, there are parts of that side of teaching that you just can't leave in the office or leave at the school building, and they just go home with you. And I have tried this year to be more I'm trying to find the word, more considerate of the times on which I send my emails. I don't send anything in the evenings. If I'm doing work on a Sunday, I might just pop an email to somebody saying, in the next few days, would you be able to have a look at this or answer this or something like that? Some people I know put in their email signature, I'm sending an email at the time that suits me. Please only reply to time that suits you. I'm not 100% sure what I think about that at this moment. But I don't support a blanket ban on emails at evenings and weekends, the sort of thing that Lucy was talking about in Portugal. And the reason why I don't support that is because I think, particularly for teachers who are parents or have other responsibilities, they might actually just be sending an email, at a time that actually works for them. If they've got to, look after their children, put them to bed, they might do a couple of hours at work, and so it might suit them. And I don't always believe in schedule sending, because if you've got 5 people who are scheduling an email for Monday at 8 a.m, that's a very busy inbox all of a sudden.
Teaching is a rewarding profession, but it comes with its fair share of challenges. That's where ADAPT come in. We're not your typical trade union, but instead a modern, apolitical alternative, offering expert legal, employment and mental health support. Protection without the politics. So what makes ADAPT different? We're always apolitical and independent, specialised solely in supporting individual teachers. Our caseworkers are professionally qualified, ensuring you always get the best advice. Plus, there's 24/7 mental health support. Whether it's a simple contract check or handling serious allegations, ADAPT are here for you. Join the thousands of educators who've chosen ADAPT to protect their careers. Subscribe at adapt.org.uk today. ADAPT. Supporting school staff. Protecting careers.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is considering significant reform of A-levels in England, which, according to the BBC, could see the introduction of what it calls a new British baccalaureate. The PM's plans could include the compulsory study of maths and English up to the age of 18, as reported in the Daily Telegraph. It's not the first time Mr Sunak has considered a shake-up, having previously said during an unsuccessful leadership campaign last year that he wanted all young people to study maths to 18. Foreign Office Minister Andrew Mitchell told BBC Radio 4 that he expects Mr Sunak to agree to reform of the education system, and said the government will be guided by the best expertise on how we ratchet up standards. Concern about any proposed changes have already been raised by unions and other post-16 professional associations, particularly around the existing issues of recruitment, retention and concerns around workload. A spokesperson for the Sixth Form Colleges Association said the post-16 curriculum was narrow by international standards, and this was partly reflective of chronic underinvestment in sixth form education since 2010. The BBC also features an article on the fall in numbers of students being accepted into universities in the UK, the first fall in 5 years. Applications also fell after demand rose during the pandemic. Fewer students got into their first choice of university this year, but more qualified for their second choice or accepted places through clearing. The new data from UCAS shows 270,350 UK 18-year-olds were accepted onto a course this year, down from 275,390 in 2022. UCAS says the figures show a return to normal growth following the surge of demand seen during the pandemic. Data for individual universities is not yet available. Last week on Teachers Talk Radio News, we featured reaction to the latest data published on suspensions and exclusions. In a linked story, Schools Week has published further analysis, this time focusing on data from schools linked to incoming Ofsted Chief Inspector Sir Martin Oliver. The analysis reported in the article suggests the Outwood Grange Academy's Trust secondaries excluded twice as many pupils as other schools in some of their regions. At a pre-appointment hearing before the Education Committee last month, Sir Martin was challenged by MPs over the Trust's high suspension rates. Sir Martin responded, "Our figures for permanent exclusions are lower than most in the areas in which we work." Schools Week says the data for the Trust's 13 secondary schools in Yorkshire and Humber had a 0.31 exclusion rate, the equivalent of 3 in every 1,000 pupils, compared to 0.17 across the region's other secondaries. In the North East, the Trust's 7 secondaries had a rate of 0.64 compared to 0.3 in others. Kim Johnson, the only committee MP to vote against the appointment of Sir Martin, said he should be brought back to answer for his words. Frank Norris, an education advisor for the Northern Powerhouse Partnership, said the original comments could be viewed as misleading. A trust spokesperson told Schools Week that Sir Martin was comparing exclusion rates between some individual Outward schools to some of the other schools in the same local authorities with similar profiles. The spokesperson also added that the schools had been underperforming for years and had now been transformed by the Trust. More details of the Schools Week analysis and full commentary can be found online. In Ireland, the Irish Independent reports on what it calls radical changes in how students are assessed as being on the way in a move to combat the threat of AI platforms such as ChatGPT. Higher education colleges are already being told to abandon certain forms of assessment because they are no longer sufficiently robust to award scores which count towards official grades. These include do-at-home assignments or essays, unsupervised online assessments, and multiple choice quizzes which are conducted online. There will be greater reliance on oral assessments to check understanding and systems to identify if students have cheated by using AI. However, colleges are being told to resist any temptation to switch back to traditional end-of-semester formal exams. Instead, they should consider short-term reweighting of assessments whilst they formulate a long-term plan. Finally, this week saw Education Secretary Gillian Keegan comment in the House of Commons that children she had visited in schools affected by poor quality concrete, known as RAC, had been petitioning me to stay in the porter cabin because they preferred it to the actual classroom. Ms Keegan's comments were met with derision by many, saying it showed a chronic lack of understanding of the poor quality facilities schools had been using for many years, particularly since the cancellation of the project to rebuild many schools. However, Downing Street defended the comments, saying it reflected a conversation with children and that the department and leaders had worked hard to make sure children had been unaffected by the current challenge. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Now, we do have another speaker, which I'm very excited about. We have got the South African in the UK at Cape Town, PJ, dad, educator and lifelong learner. Good evening, are you there?
Hi, good evening.
Fantastic, I'm delighted to be able to hear you. Welcome to Teachers Talk Radio.
Thank you.
If you could sort of introduce yourself, you don't have to give away too many details, just sort of whereabouts you're based and your current teaching position, and what you want to add to this.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm an ex-primary head and currently working as a school effectiveness partner in Essex. So working for Essex County Council. So sort of as you mentioned earlier, just bringing a primary perspective to this. And just wanted to add sort of with emails. I think many of us would agree that it can become a very stressful aspect of your role as a teacher, having to feel the need to check and to respond immediately. I know you've illustrated those disclaimers we can have with not having an expectation for people to answer, but just sort of from my perspective as a head and really sort of working with staff in my school at the time as to make that as less a stressful process as possible, was to look at the function of emails in terms of why do we send emails and what are the subjects we send emails about. And cutting a long story short, we settled on sending emails about curriculum and teaching only to teachers. So not to send emails about things like performance management, things like having to inform somebody about a meeting or that, and to find that balance between face-to-face communication and what we're using emails for.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really, really important point because, yes, myself included, some people, if they see an email and they think, oh, that doesn't look very good, and especially if it's been sent at an inconvenient time, they might get stressed all of a sudden, especially if it's at the end of the day. And actually, sometimes having that face-to-face conversation, well, actually, all the time, having that face-to-face conversation with somebody is far superior. We've got a tweet in from Abby. Abby, welcome to Teachers Talk Radio. Abby has said, schedule sent is great, but I timed them on my understanding of the staff member. I think I know what you mean by that, Abby, in terms of, whether that staff member is going to want to read that email in the morning or in the afternoon or when they're not teaching. But do feel free. Well, I have sent you a speaker request, so if you do want to come in and just clarify that, Abby, that would be absolutely brilliant. So in terms of your role then, in terms of being sort of that school effectiveness partner, working in Essex, but the council, and also from your perspective as an ex-primary head, from that primary perspective, what are the biggest workload pressures on primary teachers? And are they, because I'm secondary, Gwen's secondary, Sam is all three, but specialises in secondary. Are there any particularly unique pressures on primary teachers we really need to know about?
I think, in terms of if we're comparing marking, for instance, I have an understanding that secondary school marking is far more in depth and detailed than it would be in a primary school. Although that's also part of what teachers would cite as workload, I think it does in primary sometimes come down to the breadth of the curriculum. There are a lot of subjects you're covering, a lot of subjects you're teaching, and all of that seems to be happening at pace. Curriculums are planned out months in advance, terms in advance, and teachers always feel like they're playing catch up. They have to finish this lesson. They have to finish that lesson. It affects it affects assessment. It affects how they are supporting pupils to cope with the curriculum, because they're always feeling that they have to finish. And there seems to be a lot of pressure on that. So I think as well with, and I'm sure secondary teachers will agree, teaching for 6 hours a day is emotionally draining. And all those tasks then that teach those extra things that teachers feel they can only cope with after school, it leads to that, 13, 14-hour days. Staff are exhausted by Wednesday. They just feel like they're pushing on through. It becomes a very stressful experience. So I would say the level of support that leaders can give to curriculum design and even down to the documents that teachers hold, so that they can focus on the teaching, not so much on the administration around planning lessons, resourcing lessons, making spending more time in preparing to teach, just adds to the workload.
I think they're really important points, and also they're not always restricted to primary. Certainly the point about curriculum content is primary and secondary, but certainly a particularly big problem in primary. But also this point about documentation, which doesn't really serve a purpose. Now, in my school, I would talk about this because I was allowed to, but we had a document which was introduced at the start of the year about sort of accounting for the adaptations we're making for students with additional needs in our classrooms. And it was decided a few days ago, well, actually, teachers don't need to fill that in, because the question is was that filling in of that document going to have an impact on the students in front of us? The answer is no. And actually, you can see whether these adaptations are working by looking at the books and talking to the kids and things like that. So there's absolutely no need to fill out that document. Now, that only came about because actually teachers said, well, hang on a second, this is additional workload and it's not going to have an impact on the kids. So, the perspective of our leadership, and I think the perspective of any leadership must be, is this policy that we're going to introduce, is it going to have any impact on the kids? If it's no, then don't do it, for heaven's sake. The whole point about reducing curriculum content or thinking about curriculum about primary is really interesting, because I suppose my next question is, what on earth, how is that going to work in terms of, yes, primary teachers have got to teach 12 or 13 different subjects. What are the solutions to that? Is it good? Because otherwise you're asking, and I think Ofsted to a large extent is asking primary teachers to effectively be secondary teachers in the amount of knowledge they have, in the amount of understanding they have of different subjects, in the amount expected of subject leaders. So does there need to be some sort of stripping back of the primary curriculum in terms of what is taught? Or if not, what can be sort of done to sort of reduce teacher workload in primary schools in that respect?
I think sort of as a direct response to that, and I speak from my own experience, is trying in a primary school to find that balance between subject specialism and that all-rounded usual approach from a primary teacher to deliver everything. We have to consider as well then the balance between de-skilling teachers and allowing the sort of effects of specialism that can have a really positive impact on pupil progress. So again, contextually in the school, looking at should we have a music specialist or should we have a language specialist in Key Stage 2 teaching French, or should we have a PE specialist, so that you balance it out between teachers having to deliver everything and then also then still having a positive impact on pupil progress. And I think as running alongside that, again, it's curriculum design. And that's really, what Ofsted is focusing on is the curriculum sequenced? Is it progressive? Does it make sense? Is it well set out? Does it fit into the context? And the more you get that right, then you get the balance right in terms of how much teachers are expected to deliver, rather than just sort of loosely adapting the national curriculum and trying to stuff everything into an academic year.
Yeah, all really interesting. Lucy, I know you're a primary teacher, so as long as the space isn't on fire, I assume it's not an emergency and you'd like to add something.
No, and I don't need the toilet either.
I'll have to write a note and then let you go.
Sorry, that was terrible humour. No, I was just going to say that that the approach of having specialist teachers is something that I only came across in the international system, and it does obviously dramatically reduce the workload. So as it stands, I teach maths, English, science, topic, PSHE, and DT, and that is it. Everything else is taught by a specialist, which then means that across the week, my PPA is probably about, I mean, some teachers are going to absolutely die when they hear this, but it's about 8 hours a week. So, which is unheard of in the UK. And, we are fortunate in that we do have specialists, for music, for PE, for all these things. But in the UK, and with the current crises, multiple crises going on, I think, I love the idea of that and of having more specialist teachers in primary. I'm not averse to that, but it's recruiting them at the moment, and it's getting them in place.
100%. And when I was at primary school, which feels like a long time ago because it was, actually weirdly not that long time ago, I remember being taught by specialist teachers for music, for PE, and for, Spanish. With specialists doing that, and we didn't have our normal class teachers for that. And I think, that's why I really enjoyed music. I can't say the same for PE. And that's why I really enjoyed languages. And so actually having that specialist teacher there and actually allowing our primary teachers to focus on other subjects as well. So actually, and that was just in a state primary school in Nottingham. So it can be done, and I suppose the climate in sort of 2023 is very, very different to what it was perhaps 20 years ago. But it can be done. Now, this is a great opportunity for me to remind you that yes, teaching is a rewarding profession, but it comes with its fair share of challenges. That's where ADAPT come in. They're not your typical trade union, but instead they're a modern apolitical alternative offering expert legal employment and mental health support. This is protection without the politics. So what makes ADAPT different? Well, they're always apolitical and independent. They specialise solely in supporting individual teachers. Every caseworker is professionally qualified, ensuring you get the best advice. Plus, there's 24/7 mental health support. So whether it's a simple contract check or handling serious allegations, ADAPT are there for you. So why not join the thousands of educators who have chosen ADAPT to protect their careers. Subscribe at adapt.org.uk today. Adapt, supporting school staff, protecting careers. And here's something special for Teachers Talk Radio listeners during September. Use the codes TTR Annual or TTR Monthly, and you will receive a 10% discount on a subscription. You've only got 3 days left. So with that, you could save over £80 compared to an equivalent union membership. So really do take advantage of that individualised professional support 24/7 from Adapt. I wanted to talk more widely, I suppose, about workload, and I wanted to go all the way back to the year 2003, over 20 years ago. Now, there might be a prize to somebody who can tell me what was significant about workload in 2003, but I'm not sure I'm going to get anybody coming in and telling me. So I'm going to tell you, because 2003, over 20 years ago now, the government at the time, and most of the education unions, the exception being the NUT, as they were signed up to an agreement on reducing teachers' workloads. And they came up with this list of 24, it was 25, but 24 tasks that teachers should not be expected to do. Now, whether you're listening live or whether you're listening back, I want you to listen to this list and work out how many of these you currently do in your teaching job or you did in your last teaching job. So we've got collecting money from pupils and parents, investigating a pupil's absence, bulk photocopying, typing or making word process versions or revisions of manuscript material, word processing, copying and distributing bulk communications to parents and pupils, producing class lists on the basis of information provided by teachers, keeping and filing records, including records based on data supplied by teachers, preparing, setting up and taking down classroom displays in accordance with decisions taken by teachers, producing analyses of attendance figures, producing analyses of examination results, collating pupil reports, administration of work experience, but not selecting placements and supporting pupils by advice or visits, administration of public and internal examinations, administration of cover for absent teachers, ordering, setting up and maintaining ICT equipment and software, ordering supplies and equipment, cataloguing, preparing, issuing and maintaining materials and equipment and stock taking the same, taking verbatim notes or producing formal minutes of meetings. It hasn't finished yet. Coordinating and submitting bids for funding, school status, etc., using contributions from teachers and others. 2 more. Transferring manual data about pupils not covered by the above into computerized school management systems. And finally, managing data in school management systems. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 21 there. Some of them were merged together. Out of those 21, which basically the unions 20 years ago and the government agreed to basically ensure that no teacher would be doing that, I wonder how many of those things you currently do or have done in your current teaching role. If it's more than 10, I'd be getting a bit worried. I think I probably do, I'd say 7 or 8 of those things in my position as a teacher with a TLR. And I know that middle leaders who I know who have more responsibility than me will do much more than that. So that was 20 years ago. And yes, the world has moved on. But I suppose we sort of took our foot off the board when it came to workload. And that led us essentially to the 2016 Teacher Workload Survey, which in 2016, it showed that teachers were working an average of 54.4 hours a week, which was nearly 11 hours per working day. Primary classroom teachers and middle leaders were working an average of over 55 hours, and secondary school teachers were working more than 53 hours a week. But for senior leaders, it was even higher. For primary, it was 60-hour weeks. Secondary school leaders were working 62-hour weeks. So that works out at 12.4 hours a day, essentially 7 till 7 or 6 till 5, and then doing an extra hour or whatever, hour and a half. So yeah, that's on average. So some days would be even longer. Now in 2013, the Teaching and Learning International Survey, or TALIS, recorded for secondary teachers in England a 45.9 hour working week. So we've gone there from 46 almost to 53. So an extra 7 hours, according to my maths, a week between 2013 and 2016. The General Secretary of NASWA at the time, Chris Keith, said, once again, the government's own data confirms that teachers and head teachers are dealing with unsustainable workload demands on a daily basis, and much of their time is being spent on activities which are either unnecessary or could be undertaken by staff other than teachers. And it was agreed by, this whole report was agreed by the government in 2014, and NASWA continued to say they cannot hide the inconvenient truth that the government's actions to date have failed to tackle the causes of excessive workload and working hours, which are blighting the lives of teachers. It also worked out from this report that a third of part-time teachers said that 40% of their total hours were worked outside of school hours. So some really alarming statistics here from 2016. Mary Bousted, who at the time was General Secretary of the ATL, said that the government recognises the severity of the problems but questioned their action plan as being unambitious, which included a £75 million teaching innovation fund. Bousted continued by saying the government has failed to heed the warnings of their previous research about what drives workload: accountability, offset inspections, and government policy change. These things continue to be the major drivers of workload, and there is little sign of a government plan to effectively tackle the root causes of this problem. That was 2016. That was 7 years ago. And a lot of it has stayed the same. In fact, Ms. Stevenson has tweeted us, a very good evening, Ms. Stevenson, who has said, I work in FE and have little PPA. I teach 21 hours and have 2 hours of CPD across 4 days. And despite not teaching at all on a Friday, I have 3 hours of ECT time for an afternoon of faculty time. I'm struggling to organise my time and planning for the week ahead, all on a Friday. I hear what you say there, Ms. Stevenson. And I think you've got a huge problem of basically having your PPA all lumped together in one day. And I think as Teachers Talk Radio, we did survey teachers on this in terms of whether teachers would prefer their PPA all blocked in one day and they could take it at home if they wanted, or spread out across 5 days. And I think it's about 80-20 who said that they'd much rather one period of PPA a day. So basically 4 periods of teaching every day, rather than having 4 full days of teaching and then 1 day, wherever that might be, of PPA and of planning. Even if they could take it at home, they'd prefer the PPA a day spread out. So Ms. Stevenson's made a really, really good point there. In terms of other comments, we've got another one about emails from Abby. Says, I know some of our staff prefer to read their emails first thing in the morning. Others read them after school at home. If it's really important, I would talk to staff face to face. Not always perfect, but I'm trying to be mindful of their workload. I think that's really key in terms of being mindful of workload. It's really important. And I think from that perspective of a senior leader there, knowing your staff and knowing them, and in terms of when they will pick up emails, when their workload is lighter, when their workload is heavier, that's really important. And it's really important. And yeah, it's a really good approach from SLT to know their staff. Now I'm going to fast forward from 2016 to 2019 to the next teacher workload survey. And let's have a look at this. So an expert from the UCL Institute of Education warned that the government's teacher workload survey was not fit for purpose, stating it had a woeful response rate and is being done on the cheap. And Professor John Jerrim called on the DFE to commit more resources to gathering data on the hours teachers work from a truly representative cross-section of the profession. He was a lead author of reports that found that 1 in 4 teachers in 2019, pre-COVID, were working more than 60 hours a week on the FFT education site. This is 4 years ago. And he said that the gold standard would be for the next workload survey to attempt to gather time use diary data from a truly representative cross-section of teachers. This will undoubtedly mean the DFE has to commit more resources to measuring teacher workload rather than trying to do it on the cheap. Indeed, unless such data are collected, the DFE will probably never be able to measure teachers' working hours with the necessary precision to determine whether their efforts to reduce teacher workload have succeeded. Of the 900 schools for the 2016 survey, just 245, 27% agreed to take part. And then of the 10,000 teachers within the schools in 2016, just 3,000 completed the survey, so just over 30%. So out of every 12 teachers in 2016 who were meant to respond to the teacher workload survey, 11 didn't. So yeah, I mean, that's really interesting going into 2019. And having 1 in 4 teachers working more than 60 hours a week in 2019, based on a Nuffield Foundation survey of 40,000 primary and secondary teachers in England between 1992 and 2017, gives us perhaps a more reliable view on that. We then fast forward even further to March 2023, when a DSE survey was leaked. A leaked government report was showing, are you ready for this? 2 in 5 school leaders working 12-hour days. What's changed? Nothing between 2016, 2019 and 2023. We've had a big old pandemic in the middle, but still the issue of workload has not been solved. And this is my problem, and this is me going on a rant here, which is that we're going to be sat here in 2028 and we're going to have a new report. It will be Education Secretary Bridget Phillips, or maybe it will still be the Conservatives. Education Secretary, who knows, maybe Gillian Keegan will last another 5 years. Wouldn't bet on it if I was a betting man. But the new Education Secretary has announced another workload reduction task force to reduce workload amongst the teaching profession. We're going to get another 5 hours a week taken off. The problem is it's not going to do anything. We've been there in 2016, we've got 12-hour working days. We've been there in 2019, we've had unacceptable 12-hour days. And then in 2023, we had 40% of school leaders working 12-hour days. And in the last 3 years, well, compared to 2019, this survey from 2023 showed that a classroom teacher's working week had reduced by less than an hour. Less than an hour in 3 years, and leaders' working weeks had gone up. So the government's pledge of essentially reducing teacher workload by 5 hours a week, it was calculated by Schools Week, but at that rate it would take more than 18 years to reduce teacher workload by 5 hours a week. This wasn't given to STRB, but it has shown that in the long term, in the last 7 years, we really haven't got too much at all. The government pledged in 2019 in their manifesto to drive down unnecessary workload and pressures so leaders can ensure schools are brilliant places to work, freeing teachers to focus on teaching great lessons. Gillian Keegan, of course, earlier this year said that artificial intelligence could potentially help with day-to-day tasks. And the NAHT said the findings were a damning indictment of government policies which have neglected schools for over a decade, and with them the futures of our children. They lay bare the unacceptable hours worked by school leaders who have lost nearly a fifth of their real terms pay since 2010, and overwhelmingly feel that their views are not valued by policymakers, including the government. Additional findings from this report was that 72% of teachers and leaders said their workload was unacceptable. 62% said they didn't have sufficient control over it either. 2/3 of teachers said they spent over half of their time on tasks other than teaching. Think about those lists of 21 tasks I did and how many you do. That's 2/3 of teachers saying they spent over half of their time on those things. For secondary teachers, 77%. And you had 13% who were rarely or not at all satisfied with their job, but 58% saying they were satisfied most or all of the time. Now, matching with what Gwen was talking about before she dropped out, left teaching, 84% said that they enjoyed classroom teaching most or all of the time. And that's what keeps people in, working with the kids. In terms of people considering leaving the state sector, you have 92% who reported high workload as a factor. You have 76% blaming government initiatives or policy changes, and 69% citing pressure around people, outcomes, or inspection. As schools said that the report laid bare the crisis facing the teaching profession, the DFE said it was listening to teachers about the issues that affect them, which is why our offer also committed to reducing workload by 5 hours a week. 5 hours a week. Gwen said it's not enough. Sam implied it's not enough. I don't think it's enough. If you do think it's enough, and I do really want to hear from you. So on the bottom left of your screen, you should be able to request to speak if you're listening live tonight. If you don't want to speak, but you want to tweet or message or whatever we're calling it now, on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, there is a speech bubble. You can see where other people have tweeted us tonight, and you can tweet us your thoughts. Is 5 hours a week enough? Is the fact that we've previously reduced a teacher's workload by 48 minutes per week on average. Is that embarrassing? Is that something to be proud of? And so, in response to all of this, and in the context of this report, the government this month announced a teacher workload advisory group. It will make recommendations to government, Ofsted and school and trust leaders by the end of March 2024. Initial recommendations would be made by the end of October 23, including, wait for this, updating and reinserting the previously removed list of 21 administrative tasks that do not require the professional skills of a teacher into the school teacher's pay and conditions document. So those tasks, which I read out, and you thought, oh my word, I do at least half of these, we may find at the end of next month, you might not have to do any of these at all. It's also going to suggest straightening the implementation of the 2016 recommendations and maximising sign-up to the Education Staff Wellbeing Charter. So on the surface, this looks like it might have a bit more of a difference than what we saw in 2016 and 2019. We then start to look at the people who are members of the task force. Now, I do know some of these people, and I know that they're wonderful people, but I won't tell you which people. I will leave it up to you. The current members are James Bowen, who is Assistant General Secretary of the NAHT. We also have Darren Northcott, a national official for NASWT, Adrian Prandle, who is with the NEU, and Sarah Tanton, who is a Deputy Director at the Association of School and College Leaders, ASCL. So all four the major educational unions are represented. From there, it doesn't look as promising for your classroom teacher. We've got, I won't name these people, but we've got a CEO, another CEO, a Director of Training and Development. We've got a Senior Advisor for the Local Government Association. You've got a CEO, another CEO, a Deputy Chief Executive. How exciting. Not a CEO, but a Deputy. Another CEO, a lecturer at UCL Institute of Education, and an English teacher. One English teacher in there at the end. And as Cape Town PJ has said, the problem is there are actually no teachers represented on that task force. Not fully true. You've got Kate Treacy there, English teacher at Parliament Hill School, although my understanding about Parliament Hill School is that they are sort of workload leaders to an extent, and that Kate's actually a middle leader rather than a classroom teacher, which, hey, is better than nothing. And a lot of the people who have tweeted us over the last week or 2 weeks or so have made the same point that I have, which is, look, we need more classroom teachers represented on the task force. And we actually need to hear more from class teachers. And a lot of people agree. Some people might argue that actually CEOs have the helicopter view, if you like, of education and can take soundings from their teachers and can represent hundreds, if not thousands of teachers, rather than just individuals. And that might be one way of looking at it. But Cape Town PJ is still with us. And you said the problem is there are actually no teachers represented on that task force. Anything else you want to say about that task force?
Well, I mean, there is a diverse sort of representation across the breadth of education and schools as such. But working teachers, those are the people who are experiencing the problem. Now, for example, if you equate it, if you're trying to investigate something in your school, for example, if you want to change your ethos or you're looking at introducing something, you're going to consult your pupil voice because that's the body of your school. And similarly, these are the people that are working on the ground, experiencing it every day. They have a strong opinion on what works for them and what doesn't work for them, and what they find useful and what they don't find useful, rather than relying on survey results. I think the voice of teachers need to be there. The voice of people who are active in it every day need to be part of the solution.
I fully agree with you there, in terms of making sure that classroom teachers' voices are well and truly heard. I mean, one way of looking at it is classroom and I don't want to disparage CEOs here, because I do know a few, and I know that they do genuinely care about education and they do care about the schools they manage. But if classroom teachers aren't on these panels because they don't have the time to be on these panels, and CEOs, they are busy people, they have a different set of challenges, but actually CEOs do have the time to appear on these panels. So we could be giving teachers more time to actually, give their views to the government. The Education Select Committee is always a really important one to speak with as well. In fact, I'm going to tell you now, you can email the Workload Reduction Task Force with your views on how to improve teacher workload. Their email address, get ready, you might want a pen and paper, is workloadreduction.taskforce, all one word, task force, at education.gov.uk. So if you want to let this workload reduction task force know what would work for you as a classroom teacher, I reckon you could probably email them and let them know. Now, be very nice, because I'm sure they're busy people and they're all professionals and certainly don't swear or anything like that. But just drop them an email and just say, look, I'd really appreciate it if we can focus on this. We've spoken tonight about all sorts of things. We've spoken about PPA, we've spoken about emails, we've spoken about reducing curriculum content. One thing we haven't spoken about is homework, which is really interesting, and probably a whole news show. We've spoken about emails, we've spoken about working hours, we've spoken about basically removing ideas and policies which don't have an impact on the kids. I spoke very early at the start of the show about flexible education. We've had people like Sam come in and talk about flexible working and working from home. And of course, on Monday, a couple of days ago, Tom Rogers, who is here in the studio tonight, very good evening, Tom, hosted with Lindsay Patience and Lucy Rose about their new book with Sage, Flex Education, and you can get 25% off that with the code TTR25 from the Sage website. And of course, next Monday, Tom Rogers is back, and he's going to be asking, are teachers more tired than ever before? The other thing we talked about was whole class feedback, not marking. Sam was very supportive. Gwen was cautious. And if you want to find out more about verbal feedback, then it's great time for me to tell you that this episode is sponsored by Vibble, the home of verbal feedback. Vibble is a feedback management platform designed to reduce teacher workload. Using Vibble, you can simply snap student work, record verbal feedback, and send your feedback to a student or even a whole class in seconds. Once your students receive your feedback, they're notified by email and can access and respond to your feedback on any device. You can track and monitor how students interact with your feedback and set up feedback coaches to instill a culture of best practice in your school. The possibilities are endless, and this is why Vibble has been trusted by schools across 18 countries to reduce teacher workload and give better, faster, and more collaborative feedback. So to set up a free trial or pilot, visit www.vibble, that's VIBBL.co.uk today. It's also a really good opportunity for me to remind you that, yes, teaching is a rewarding profession, but it comes with its fair share of challenges, and that's where ADAPT come in. They're not your typical trade union, but instead a modern apolitical alternative offering expert legal, employment and mental health support protection without the politics. So what makes ADAPT different? Firstly, they're always apolitical and independent. They specialise solely in supporting individual teachers, and every caseworker is professionally qualified, ensuring you get the best advice. Plus, there's 24/7 mental health support, whether it's a simple contract check or handling serious allegations. ADAPT are there for you. Join the thousands of educators who have chosen ADAPT to protect their careers. Subscribe at adapt.org.uk today. ADAPT, supporting school staff protecting careers. And something special for Teachers Talk Radio listeners in the final 3 days of September. You can use the codes TTR Annual or TTR Monthly, and you'll receive a 10% discount on a subscription. With Adapt, you can save over £80 compared to an equivalent union membership. It's something I've really been considering moving to Adapt myself, and those discount codes could be really, really useful for me. Yeah, so thank you very much to our sponsors for the month, Adapt, and also a big thank you to Vibble as well. In terms of what we've got for you on the rest of Teachers Talk Radio this week, I'm delighted to tell you now that in 10 minutes time, Hannah Wilson is going to be over on Podbean, and she's joined by special guest Andy Goldhawk to talk about his latest book, The Super Quick Guide to Learning Theories and Teaching Approaches. I think that sounds really, really interesting, and I can't wait to find out more about those learning theories and teaching approaches. So in 10 minutes time, do you make sure you join Hannah over on the other side, so to speak, on Podbean. Other shows which have really caught my eye over the last few weeks. Lucy's show 2 weeks ago now, and with Adrian Bethune, I can't never pronounce his surname. Wellbeing in the primary classroom. Really, really important. And we've been focusing on workload and wellbeing often go in hand. So make sure that you keep an eye on that as well. That's available on our website, ttradio.org/listen back. Marie is on the 2nd of October on Monday. She's joined by Zoe, who works in the college and is a yoga teacher. They'll be talking about how she works with young people with SEND and mental health needs and how we can all bring a bit of peace into our daily lives. Richie has been on this Monday talking about the current gender divide and ideas about how to teach boys effectively. That sounds really interesting as well. We've got Paul Hazard on tomorrow. Really excited about this one. He's on with Professor Dan Rebellato, who's a prolific dramatist, writer, and lecturer about the underuse audio drama in teaching and learning. That sounds really exciting. I know Dan's got quite a big following, so I'm really excited to have him on there. And Emily Edwards was on, of course. I really like Emily as a host. Absolutely brilliant set of shows she had recently. And her latest show last night was on building positive relationships, exploring a practical definition of what positive relationships are and discussing some tried and tested tips for building more positive relationships with our students. The key thing here from a Teachers Talk Radio perspective, and I'll always beat the drum for TTR, is these hosts are teachers like you. I'm teaching 21 hours a week this year. Emily's been teaching as a head of subject. Marie has been leading a school. Paul has just retired from teaching and has had a long and illustrious career. Richie's a teacher of English. Tom is still teaching. Tom Rogers is still teaching amongst his many other responsibilities. Lucy, of course, is a primary school teacher. We're teachers. We're talking teaching. We know what it's like at the moment into the month of September and in teaching in the autumn term. We know it's tough. And we're here to help support you. And if you want to join us on Teachers Talk Radio and you want to host your own show, we'd love to have you. There are many different ways you can get involved. The first, easiest way is to DM us at TT Radio Official on Twitter/X. Ask us for an info pack and we'd be more than happy to help you. The second thing you can do is fill out our contact form on our website, ttradio.org, expressing your interest in being a host, and we'd love to hear from you on that. And of course, if you want to come straight at us, you can email us at info@ttradio.org. We've got some spaces available. We've got evening shows. We have morning break shows for those who teach part-time or might not be teaching at the moment because they might have retired. We have weekend slots. We have slots on Spaces. We have slots on Podbean. We've got so much out there, and we really want to hear from you, the wonderful teaching profession. Whether you're an ECT or a head teacher or somewhere in between, or you're a TA or you're a tutor or whatever your role in education is, if you're working in a school most of the week, and you're working with kids and you're working with other teachers, we want to hear from you as a host on Teachers Talk Radio. Now, I do want to wrap up tonight because I know that Hannah is going to be on in 5 minutes, and I want to ensure that as many of our wonderful listeners as possible listening live get over to Podbean in time for Hannah at 9 p.m. and a wonderful special guest. If you want to listen live, you can go to the Listen Live page on our website at ttradio.org, or you can go on Podbean, download the Podbean app and listen. You can text in and call into the Podbean studio live from 9 p.m. Really excited about having a show at 9 p.m. And that's why we're going to wrap up a little bit early. A big thank you to our sponsors tonight. A big thank you to Gwen and to Sam and for Cape Town PJ for calling in as well. A massive thank you to Lucy, who's been behind the scenes and an absolute star from 7:30. And I shall see you in a future Wednesday to come. So it's goodbye from me. Tune in, talk it out. See you later.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.